As Danica said, my name is Adam Figley. I'm an Adaptive Insight Specialist here at RKLE Solutions. And I'm super excited today to get a chance to showcase one of Adaptive's 3 reporting tools in dashboards. Over the last couple of years, they've done a great job in improving not only the interface, but continually putting out some new features that I think you're all going to really enjoy. Before we get too deep into the demo or the presentation today, I'd like to give a little background on myself. So as Danica mentioned, I am an Adaptive Insight Specialist. I am based out of the Lancaster office here in Pennsylvania. My history with RKL, I've actually been with the firm for 4 years now. It's hard to believe. When I first started, I was on the CPA side of the firm. I worked in their small business group. So my background is in accounting. And then for the last 2 years, my primary focus has been on Adaptive Insights implementations, where I've been helping develop client budgeting and planning models. If you talk to anybody that knows me, you'll know that I am an avid disc golfer. Typically if I'm not working, I'm usually out on the course somewhere. So if for whatever reason, if you ever travel to Eastern Pennsylvania, we do have a lot of awesome courses at your disposal. So if something you're interested in, if you're an outdoors person, you enjoy hiking, I like to say it's hiking with an activity, but big disc golfer and overall sports fan. So getting to the presentation a little bit here, where are you in your customer journey? So whether maybe you're just starting your implementation or approaching a go live date, or maybe you've been a power user or Adaptive for some time now. What I'm going to cover today will undoubtedly add to your reporting arsenal. At the end of the day, as the picture on the screen demonstrates, is everyone plans. So I just think this tool does such a great job of providing you a visual of what your plan is going to look like. So for today's agenda, I'm going to demonstrate just how easy, powerful, and fast dashboards truly are. Those 3 words will be prevalent throughout the next hour. We'll get into some of the dashboard basics. How do you create a perspective? How do you create a dashboard? What is the difference between these 2 things? I think it's important that everyone in attendance today has a strong foundation before attempting to build their own dashboards. Once we've created that perspective in dashboards, we'll get into the various chart types that are at your disposal. There are actually 16 different chart types in dashboards. And today, through my demo, I'll go over some of the best practices with these. And then once the charts have been added and your dashboard is complete, the real power of the tool comes with being able to interact with your data. So not only is it a great visual, but you're able to drill into these charts and explore and find answers. And as I go throughout my demo, I will be pointing out some of the new features from the latest release that I think you're all going to really enjoy. And by then, we'll have about 10 minutes left, 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A. I'll turn it over to you guys. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. And then I can send you on your way with some CPE. So where do you start? Where to start? So the first step when you log into Adaptive and go to the dashboard tool is going to be adding a perspective. And this is where terminology is key, understanding the difference between what is a perspective, what is a dashboard, what is a chart. A perspective contains 1 or more dashboards and typically focuses on a specific area of your plan. Once that perspective is created, you then have the opportunity to add 1 or more dashboards to the perspective. Once the dashboards have been added, this is where you then can have the option to, you have those 16 different charts that you have at your disposal where you can drag and drop them onto the dashboard. These charts can be placed anywhere on the dashboard, and once they are on, they can be rearranged, resized, organized at any time. Who has access? Security for Adaptive has always been a priority, and that's no different with dashboards. So as far with dashboards, there's a single analytics related permission for each user called access discovery. With this permission, you not only get access to the tool, but you can create your own personal perspectives, share your personal perspectives with other users, and view and or edit perspectives that have been shared with you. And a little bit that go along with the sharing of the perspectives, if you're concerned about data the users are going to have access to, all of that is still being honored with the model management with how your model is set up. So users will only see data in charts for levels and versions to which they've been granted access. So you can rest easy that if you share out your perspectives, that users are only going to be seeing what they should. Understand your model and where dashboards fit in. Adaptive is an ecosystem, and it's going to utilize your existing data in your model. So in a nutshell, dashboards is your model. Anything that you have built or you're going to build in your implementation can be utilized in dashboards. And a last note for this slide, I would just want to say, keep it simple. I know probably many of you have created dashboards in other programs, tools before, like Excel. I would say just get some paint on the canvas. Don't overcomplicate anything and set some expectations when going into this. Take the next step. So with creating those perspectives and dashboards, you have the various chart types that I've mentioned. And when I get into the demo, we're going to walk through several of them, mainly the more popular ones. And then we'll also get to experiment with the different chart settings. So the good thing here is that the settings for the charts, there's only 3 of them. So you don't have a ton to kind of like sift through. But the thing to note here is that the settings within each tab can depend on the chart type that you've selected. So your appearance settings, those are typically anything that determine the look and the feel of the chart. Your data settings is where you're going to be pulling your accounts that drive the data series within the chart. And then of course your time settings is those calendar options in Adaptive where you can set your granularity. Now within the with the time settings, there's also an ability to pin and unpin. So the main thing around this is the ability to have your time fixed to a particular chart. So if I wanted a range, for example, of just the fiscal year 2020, January to December, I could pin that to that chart and it wouldn't be relative to the dashboard's time. The top of each dashboard, there's a context filter for time that will be that you can set, and then every chart can be relative to that if you would like. So that was where the unpinning of it would be. If you unpin the charts, every chart will be relative to that time filter at the top. And you'll get to see that shortly when I get into the tool. Breaking down chart data by dimensions other than time. This is a great way to slice and dice your data within the chart with just a few clicks. What I want to note here is when you think of dimensions, don't just think of your custom dimensions. This could also be your level structure. So if you wanted to break out, say, your operating expenses by department, you could absolutely do that with this feature. And then once you have your charts built, again, where the power comes in is the drillability. You can customize your drillability and get down to the nitty-gritty details to answer some of the questions you may have. So lead, don't follow. The key here that I want to kind of get across is be brave and share your work. I know when you first get into this tool, you'll be creating your own personal perspectives, and sometimes you're going to be unsure if it's ready to be shared out with people. I would encourage you to share your work. I mean, the beauty of this tool really is being able to collaborate with your team. And I'm going to reiterate that the security that is set up in Adaptive is still there. So you don't have to worry. Your users are only going to see data that they have been granted access to. A few of the new features I'll get into more in detail in the demo, but we now have Snapshot Scheduling, the ability to pull in an actual sheet that you've built onto your dashboard so you can see the data that is driving your charts. And there's the ability to set dashboards as your homepage. With that, you also have some customizability. If you have access to your administrative settings, you can not only change the color of the charts within the actual dashboards, but you can do so within the administrative settings. You can have them set as a default to your company colors.
Hey, Adam?
Yes.
We have a question. How much GL customization will be required if we are bringing Adaptive into an existing setup in order to take full advantage of the system?
Whatever you have set up as far when you're setting your GL structure in model management, when you're first setting up your implementation, all of that's going to be identical to all that's going to immediately pull over into the dashboard tool. So any of the accounts that you've set up, any of the metrics, that's automatically pulled over into the dashboard tool. So there's no extra work needed there. So the last thing that I would want to mention here with the is their learning management system. So Adaptive has a phenomenal learning management system. Education systems have come a long way, and there's a wealth of information and multiple courses at your disposal. So I would encourage you to check those out. I believe there's even 2 courses already out there. So if what I covered today isn't quite enough for you and you would want to kind of explore dashboards a little bit more, you have that option. There's also the knowledge base. So at the top right-hand corner of Adaptive, you have a question mark. I would encourage you to check that out as well. If you're kind of stuck on or you have a quick question you can't quite figure out, their knowledge base is very, very helpful. And of course, if those 2 items don't work well, you can't find the answer to your question between those 2 things, you can always reach out to your RKL team. So I see we have some questions coming in here. I'm going to get into the demo a little bit, and then maybe some of those might be answered. And then if not, I can address them at the end here. So when you first log into Adaptive, obviously you come to your home page, your landing page. And I'm going to point out one of the new features that they just released. The welcome page is great. I encourage a lot of people when they're first getting into Adaptive to keep this because they put a lot of good news on here, any maintenance. But if you actually, and let me come up here to the top right-hand corner of Adaptive next to the Help Center, and you just click on the drop-down and go to your user settings. On the left-hand side here under the home page, you actually now have the ability to adjust that landing page. So when you log in, if you don't want to see the welcome page, you can set that to be your dashboards. So whenever you launch Adaptive, the first thing you see is dashboards. So you have that option. You also can set it, obviously you can see here to either model management, sheets, reporting. So you have options there, but I just wanted to point that out. So if I come back here to my main page, Adaptive coins this as their hamburger icon in the upper left-hand corner is your navigation menu. So if you have that access discovery permission, you should be able to see the dashboard tool here. So I'm going to launch into that. And the first thing you're going to see is your perspective pane. So at the top, you'll have your personal perspectives, which are any perspectives you're continually working on that you have not shared out yet. So those are only for your eyes. And then below will be any of the shared perspectives that have been shared with you. And again, as I said, the first step into starting your journey with dashboards is to create a perspective. So let's do that here. If we navigate over to the upper right-hand corner of the screen, there's a little plus sign that says New. If you click on that, it's going to prompt you to name the perspective. So once you've named the perspective, it's going to launch you into your first dashboard. So you can see here, this entire screen here is your dashboard, and it exists. There's currently one set up. You can add as many of these as you would like. So if I click the edit icon in the upper right-hand corner here, if I would wanted to add another one, you just click this plus sign here. And then you have a second dashboard. What I'm going to first do is point out up here, if you click on the actual perspective, this is where you can actually rename it. And then you also have the option to add additional context filters. So by default, everybody has these 3 default come in. So you have your time, your level, and your currency. You can add additional custom dimensions to this if you would like. So you have some options there, and that's simply just remember by clicking the name of the perspective and then coming down here to the data settings. If I come back to the dashboard, if I just click in this open space, you can see this is where it's showing the name of what the current dashboard I'm on. So if I name this, you can see it change up here in the tab. And then you have 2 different, 2 places that you're gonna look for your settings. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you have your charts and your accounts. Here are those 16 different chart types I was talking about. And then you have any access, again, like you were saying about the GL, all access to your GL accounts, any of your modeled cube, anything in your model that you had created accounts for will be brought over here into the dashboard tool. So let's start with something basic. I'm going to come back over here to the charts. And if you just simply left click and then drag and drop it, you can place it anywhere within this dashboard. Once it's been added, you can resize it, move it. And then you'll also notice as soon as the chart has been added to the dashboard, those 3 settings I mentioned in the slide deck appear. So you have your appearance settings, your data settings, and your time settings. Within the data settings, you can definitely add your accounts here if you want. Best practice, however, would be to pull them from those account tabs over here on the left. The reason I say that is when you go into these accounts here, this stays expanded and you can just drag whatever you want over at the same time. If you add them individually over here, you're gonna have to click and drill through each and every time. So it's just more efficient to pull them from the left side here. So I'm gonna grab product revenue. And I'm actually gonna drag and drop it over the chart and I'm gonna grab it 3 times. And once you have grabbed those, you can see that those accounts are populating over here under the data settings. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change the name of these guys. So I'm going to call this current year product revenue. And then I'm going to select my version. So by default, the version automatically looks at the version selector, which is up here. So I'm going to want to pull actuals. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here. I want last year. And then to get last year's numbers, I can come down here to the time alignment. And I can say, look at previous and look back 12 months. And then for my last guy here, I'm actually going to leave that on the version selector. That's our budget. And I'm going to make this our budget. And I'm also going to change the series type here to be a line so you can see the budget separated from our actuals and our plan. So just like that, we now have a good breakdown of product revenue. We have actuals for the current year, actuals for the prior year, and then we have our current year budget floating over the top. Now, some other things that you can do here, if I come back to the appearance settings, I can obviously name this. So if I want to name this product revenue comparison. The chart type here, now this is something unique to specific charts. So for example, here, the column, line, area, and bar charts, they all carry the same exact settings over here. So once you have the data that you want to review and you have your settings all set, if you come in here and you say, hey, I want to see what this looks like as a bar, you can easily switch between any one of the 4 chart types there, and it will adjust for you. So you don't have to start from scratch. You obviously have access to any of the font or italics for the legend and the axes. And then the last thing that I'd like to mention here on this basic chart would be your time setting. So as you can see, we are currently pinning the time. So up here, you'll notice this context filter for time is going to automatically set to current day. So this chart is not looking at this time filter at all. It's not relative to this time. I'm just pinning it here. And you can adjust that by just unpinning it. And you'll notice this is going to then go from May 2020 to May 2020. And you can obviously look backwards, look forwards, pick a single period. So you have some options there, but I wanted to point that out. So now that we got kind of a basic test, I'm going to back out to our perspectives, again, our perspective screen. And I'm going to go into a demo that is like half built here. I've got some charts already in here, and you'll notice that I have most of these unpinned. I would say best practice is going to be to have these unpinned. That way, whenever you want to update the time, you update it up here, and then all the charts get updated at the same time. So I know I don't have actuals through May in this instance, so I'm actually going to switch this to the end of Q1. And I'm going to hit the edit screen here, and we're going to look at this donut chart for starters. So the first chart that I walked through, you were able to see, I was able to pull a GL account, put it on the chart, and then adjust budget actuals, do a little comparison. So not only can you grab GL accounts, but you also have access to all your other accounts. So this right here, I've pulled in a cube account. So if I come over here to my navigation menu and just quickly show you, I have this product revenue cube sheet. So what I'm pulling is I'm pulling this net revenue account, and then obviously we have some dimensions on this sheet, which will allow me to break down the chart other than time, but by dimension. So I pop back over here. You'll notice I have my net revenue on there. And then what I can do is I can come down here to this breakdown. Instead of breaking it down by time, I'm going to break it down by dimension. And you can come in here, select any dimension attribute, any dimension, level, anything you want. So let's keep size here. And what you'll notice is the donut chart, you have different appearance settings. So this one, you can have it set to be by %, or you can actually have it show the data showing on it. So you have some options with the donut. Would also like to point out that with the donut chart, these are similar to this column, line, area, and bar. The donut works well with the pie, the pyramid, and the funnel. All four of these, you can do the same exact thing. Now, once you have this chart done, I'm going to kind of explain kind of the drill through process. So now that I have an account on the chart, I have it broken down by dimension. If I click done here, I can actually click on one of these. If I would say small size for product revenue, I can explore data. So it's going to launch into, just like you explore cells and sheets, you can come in here and drill through your options to see where that data is landing. If you know the exact dimension that you want to drill into, you can actually click on here, and there's going to be a list of dimensions for you. So if I want to see basically small product revenue size by location, I can absolutely do that. If I want to go down even further, if I want to look at US and break down into customer, I can do that. So you have this really good drillability. If, for example, these dimensions that are being shown here, if there's going to be certain dimensions on there that you know aren't going to be relative to that account or make sense for that account, you can actually customize that. So if I edit this, I go over to the accounts, go to my cube account.
This Adam's on my deck. This is a webinar.
And then on the net revenue.
Sorry, Adam, someone has their volume on. Can you please mute yourself?
So yeah, once you have your net revenue account, you can come over here, and if you hover over it, there's going to be little 3 dots here. And this allows you to basically change your drill options for that account. So if I come in here, if I don't want to see all these, you can definitely customize this and say, hey, I only want to see level and customer when I drill into this account. So definitely a nice little feature there. So now we have 2 basic charts here. Move on to another chart, KPIs. A lot of people enjoy KPIs. They're great visual to pair with other charts. So as you can see here, if I click on this KPI, for example, I'm pulling that same net revenue account. And the data settings for this aren't nearly, as you can tell, as robust as the donut or the column charts. Most of the settings for this type of chart are up here in the appearance settings. So I have my net revenue account, and then basically what you're going to do is you're going to set a reference value and a comparison value. So the reference value is what is showing currently right in your face. So you can see here net revenue for actuals. So I'm showing that as my reference value. And then you can pick your comparison, which I'm comparing actuals to budget here. And if you would like to see the variance and a variance percent, you have the option to do that as well, where you can pick how you want to compare, how you're calculating that variance. So pretty easy. The micro chart's also pretty cool. These are, you'll see this as in the scorecard as well, but in the KPI, they allow you to set these little micro charts at the bottom. Currently, I have this set to a trailing to be trailing, to do like a rolling 12. And you can see point in time data here. And then you can also adjust the type of chart, micro chart you want to see. So if you'd rather see this as a column, you can do that. Now, what's nice about these KPIs is if you want to have multiple of them, you don't have to start from scratch. So for example, I have one here, I have actuals versus budget. What you can do is you can actually hover over the chart, and if you look at these 3 dots here, you can actually duplicate any chart on your dashboard. If I duplicate this, I can then come over here and I'll grab another. Let's grab EBITDA. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the net revenue account. Then I'm going to come over here, and I know I have a P&L. Here are my customs. I'm going to grab EBITDA. And then just like that, I'm able to have EBITDA come through. It's KPI for EBITDA. And then you can come in here and adjust the color so that they stand out. It's different. So pretty simple. Other thing I didn't mention is you can also add different headers in here. I usually don't add the series header because typically what I name the KPI chart is what I'm going to be analyzing. And then you can also add a version header that kind of calls out what you're comparing. So this is actuals versus budget. Moving on to a different chart type here that probably you guys will be more familiar with is going to be a crosstab. So this is something that's very, that you'll probably be very familiar with. Crosstabs are consist of columns and rows that include at least one account and an optional dimension. These are they're very similar to pivot tables. So they're excellent for summarizing data in like a grid or matrix format. And that's what I have started down here. So within here, I've pulled some accounts over. I'm actually using similar accounts to this product revenue sheet here. So I have units, price, discounted price, and discount percentage. And you'll notice again, the appearance settings, you'll notice here that the appearance settings aren't nearly as robust as some of those other charts. There's not quite as much you can do as far as formatting and changing the cosmetic look of it. But when you come into the data settings, you'll see there's columns and rows. So you're actually able to, whenever you add either dimension or account onto this chart type, you can actually move these. So if I'd rather see the accounts on the row instead of the column, I can do that. So what I'm going to do is since we have an account, or we have our accounts already, I'm going to add some dimensions. So I'm going to come down here, did size already. Let's do group and color. And then just like that, you have a nice pivot grid/matrix format of your data. And the common question we usually get from clients is, this is great, this is awesome, can we get totals? And unfortunately, as of right now, the crosstab, you cannot add totals or subtotals to these charts. So it's just mainly for visualizing, summarizing your data. Next chart I'm going to be going over, as I mentioned, is your scorecard. And this is something that I know a lot of clients really enjoy. This is great for, here I have a P&L, a high-level P&L, summarizing that. So with the scorecard, you have a few different settings here. So scorecards are good for a series of data in a tabular format, and they're good at summarizing actuals versus plan. When you first drag the chart onto the dashboard, the sections pane over here, by default, there's going to be 3 of them. You're going to see month, quarter, and year. And then within each section, there's going to be 3 columns. That's going to be actual, budget, and variance. So as you can see here, we have an actual, budget, and a variance already for the current period. So I'm going to walk you through basically how to add an additional section. So we're going to do the same thing that we have here, but we're going to do year to date. So what you got to do is you simply come down here and you click on the add section. Once you add the section, you can expand it and change the name. So I'm going to simply call this YTD. And you'll see it update here on the chart. Once I have that set up, it's just a matter of adding the columns. So I'm going to add 3 more columns. And then I'm going to come into each of these and then adjust my settings. So I'm going to want my actuals to be first, similar to over here. So we can come down here to the version, select our actuals, and then we can then adjust our time. So I can look at this and say, give me year to date. We'll do the same thing for the budget. So we have our budget selected. Just adjust the time. And then with the third thing, you have 4 different types within the columns in this chart. So you have your value, a variance percent, and a micro chart, which you can see all of those being demonstrated over here. I'm going to grab a variance. And just like your KPI charts above, it's the very same setting. So you're going to want to pick what you're referencing. So I want to reference actuals, year to date, and compare it to the budget. And I want it to be reference minus the comparison. And then I'm going to do the last same thing with the percent. And then just like that, you have the same data that you're seeing for the period for this P&L, but year to date. So pretty slick. And you can add a bunch of sections here. The more sections you add, obviously, you need to it can distort basically the text that you have. So you have to be kind of pick and choose your spots with how many columns you're going to create. But with this is also a great opportunity to highlight another one of the new features in adaptive dashboards. So we have a high-level P&L here. If I wanted to see, all right, what are the details behind where this data is coming from? So this is actually a sheet that we have out here in our demo instance. It's this functional P&L. So now we finally have the opportunity in dashboards to bring this exact sheet and put it right underneath that chart. So I come back here to my dashboards and go over here to the charts. Down here at the bottom, there's a sheet chart. So I'm going to grab that guy, expand it, name it. And then it's pretty simple. The only options you have for the data settings is really to select the sheet that you want. So I'm going to grab the functional P&L. And just like that, we have the sheet in the dashboard. So when I come down here, I can compare what I'm seeing high level versus what's making up my revenue, what is making up my cost of sales. And what's awesome about these is these aren't just for show. You can actually adjust these when you're not in edit mode. You can adjust the display settings just like the normal sheets. You can enter and edit data on these sheets, on these sheet charts, save them, and then watch the data in your charts update real time. So very slick. One of the last charts I wanted to kind of go over, one of the more complex charts, would be a waterfall. So I'm going to pop over here to my operating expense dashboard. And waterfalls are, as you know, great for variances. They show when you started, where you ended, and how you got there. The initial and final value columns are usually full, and then you have these floating columns in between that show kind of the variance, that how you got to that point. So I've already started this. I'm pulling my operating expenses here. And the first thing you can see here is you can set the color for the open and close columns and the colors for your variances. If you scroll down to the bottom on the appearance settings here, you'll notice you have your reference and your comparison. And very similar to like setting a variance or using a KPI chart or the scorecards, you set basically what you want to start with and what you want to end with. Now, I have it set here to break down by level, but I don't want high level. I don't want my big companies here. I just want to see US regions. So what you can actually do is if you open the account, you can actually filter for just the US in your level structure. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to drill down to my company A, operations, and just give me my US regions. And just like that, we can see our operating expenses for budget and then what it was for actuals. If you come down here, you also have the ability, if there's too many points of data, you don't want to see all these, you can adjust that, make it a little more digestible, set it to 5. And you can always come in here and add some data labels so you can see those variances a little more clearly. And you can see sometimes there's, depending on how the account is set up, there can be rounding. So if you come over, go back to the data settings under the account, you can adjust those display units as well. So if I come here, that way you can see it a little clearer. It's pretty easy. Definitely beneficial. I know a lot of clients enjoy the waterfall. It's very useful to them. So hopefully you can find this to be useful as well. The last thing I wanted to cover today in the demo was just how easy it is to create a new metric and then apply it in chart and dashboards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to travel over here back to the navigation menu. I'm going to go to my model management. Go to my metrics. And I'm going to do something, I'm going to do expenses per employee. So measuring operating expenses for the last 12 months and doing that ratio, dividing it by the number of full-time equivalent employees. So if I come over here and add a new account, and then I can come down here to my formula assistant. And I'm going to grab my operating expenses. add a modifier for the last 12 months. And then all personnel sheets are done on model sheets, so I can filter for just my modeled accounts. And there I have my metrics. So something to note here is if you are creating something on the fly like this and you go back to your dashboard, it's not going to instantly appear. You're going to have to refresh. Sometimes you have to be patient. There's a little bit of a time delay. So I'm going to come over here and I'm actually going to refresh this dashboard. And one thing you'll notice is every time you refresh the dashboard, this context filter for time is going to default back to the current day. So I'm going to switch this back to March. And then now that metric should be available for use in my accounts. So I'm going to come down here to my metrics. There's my expenses per employee, drag and drop. And just like that, you have it. So from here, then you can basically adjust kind of the breakdown. So I want to see it by US region again. So here I have a breakdown by time, but then I can also break it down by additional dimension. And just like that, I have a rolling 12 for expenses per employee for the US regions. And I can always come in here and add data labels. I want to see that more clearly. And I can set this so you can see the actual numbers. And one thing that's kind of cool with interacting with these charts as well is with the legend, if you see data that doesn't have anything, you can actually click on these guys and remove them from the chart to clean it up a bit. So yeah, that is a quick, easy little add a metric, throw it in. Don't be bashful too to add in text charts. So if for some reason the title is kind of lengthy and you want something to be descriptive, but don't want to include it in the name of the chart, you can always grab one of these, add instructions with this. And then you have some settings up top here that you can adjust and place them anywhere on the dashboard. So now that you have your dashboard built, the last few things I want to go over with you is just the sharing aspect. So if we come back out to our dashboards here, we have a personal perspective. So now that I'm at a point where I'm ready to share this, all you have to do is hover over the perspective like you do the charts, and you'll see these 3 dots. You have the ability to also duplicate your perspectives if you want to back up, and you can share this out. So when you come to the share, you're going to have each of your individual users of your instance. You can also, within the administrative settings, set up groups of users to have that, so you don't have to go down and click all of them. And this is where you can say, hey, I want to give this person view rights, or I want to give them view and edit rights. And once you're done, you click save. You'll see it come down here to the shared perspective. And then what you can do is with the people that you've shared it with is if they come in, they see it, they look at it, and they want to make a change, they can actually come in here and check it out. So when they check out the perspective, you'll notice it comes into their personal, comes into my personal, and it shows a little lock symbol down here. And all that means is that someone else is in there editing. And it's a good way of making sure that you're not stumbling over each other, you're not making multiple changes at the same time. And then whenever you're done, you just come back in here and you say publish. While it is locked, people can still go in and view it, but then they can't edit anything. With that as well, is that one of those new features I was talking about was the snapshot scheduling. You can also do that from here. This is taking a still shot of what you're looking at in your perspective, and then you can actually address this to a particular user, groups of users, send it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and that just goes directly to the user's email, whatever email is associated with their user account, and then they can kind of see that still shot of it on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And then the last thing, new feature-wise, is being able to incorporate dashboards into your process tracker. So a good way to stay organized is to use the Adaptive's process tracker, and now dashboards is integrated with it, which is great. So I come to my navigation menu here, and we go to processes. Got my budget process up here. What I can do is create a task, and let's just say review. Set it to either my an individual, a group, and then I'm going to assign it to myself here. And what you can do is you can now actually select dashboards, which previously you could not. And it allows you to even pick the perspective you want and even the dashboard. And then I can set the due date. I'll just set tomorrow and save it. So now that I have this task in here, when I go out to my navigation menu, I go to my processes, I go to the budget process. I have each of my tasks here. I have this review dashboard demo. When I click on this task, it will automatically direct me to the perspective and the dashboard that was set up in the task. So super slick, easy way to kind of add notes in here, give instructions, and then keep on top of your budget process. How did you enjoy your trip today? Were they just as easy, powerful, and fast as I led on them to be? Did you learn a new chart or feature? Will you practice some of the best practices? And how do you feel about getting in there and building some of your own dashboards?
Are there any questions?
I saw one here about we need to adjust our structure if we want to see breakdowns by department, division, etc. There is, like if your level structure, you shouldn't have to adjust it. One way to get around it too is to utilize attributes as a great way to also break down. But you should be able to go in and, as you could see with some of the demo instances, go down from company A to operations to then like particular regions, and that will break it out automatically for you. So there shouldn't be much in the way of adjusting your structure and able to get those breakdowns that you want.
There's one other question. Is there a way to copy a chart between perspectives?
Copy a chart between perspectives? There actually is not at this time. You can you can duplicate charts within a dashboard. You can duplicate dashboards and you can duplicate perspectives, but you cannot have a chart in one perspective and carry it over to another at this time.